Hello, hello. Okay, so thank you everyone for joining this talk. I just would like to say that we have been working with Nintendo platforms for many years. We started basically in 2006, maybe 2007, with the Wii, and since then we have been always developing for Nintendo platforms as one of the most successful platforms in the world. And it's very specific platforms, as we all know. Like it's different than the others. They have the reasons to be different, and of course they are very, very successful, as we all know. And the platform itself is also has gone through many cycles, and it has been always different too, and it's has been improving a lot in terms of easiness for developers and how to access the platforms. And as you know, Nintendo Switch is one of the best platforms to start with, especially for smaller teams and for indie developers. And so I'm very happy to welcome here Mao from Nintendo to tell us a little bit more about how to start with the development and a little bit more about Nintendo Switch development. And I honestly wish that we have had such an opportunity many years ago when we have been starting the development basically for any platform, because it's very useful and very helpful for every developer. Like if you can meet and communicate directly with the platform holder and get the direct insight. Even we learn from every such presentation, even though like we work on this platform for many years. So Mao, thank you much for coming to Košice and for visiting our region and taking your time to tell us a little bit more about Switch. And yeah, the stage is yours.
Okay. Thank you very much, Peter. So, I mean, he did the introduction for me, so I'll kind of go short on this one. Quick introduction. So my name is Mao Sugiyama. I'm a business development manager working at Nintendo of Europe, which is based in Frankfurt. And one of my tasks is to support publishers, developers who are thinking of becoming publisher or thinking of becoming a developer to support you bringing your title, your game, whatever you're doing, to our platform at one point in future, maybe now, whenever. It doesn't really matter. We do everything in very long-term vision. We're not a very reactive company, as you probably know. We're not the latest, we're not the fastest to do things, but we just want to basically create an environment where everyone can join and enjoy some sort of longevity. We want people to think, oh, you know, Nintendo is safe. You know, they're there, they're going to be there, they're going to be keeping things in pieces and kind of providing stability to the industry. And that's kind of what we indirectly aim to be. So we embrace working with big and small developers and publishers. And this is to say that we're not so blinded by the company you're working for or the logos that you may bear. And it's not really about your brand, basically, that matters to us. It's actually what you're creating, because we fully understand the importance and creativity of an individual. Even for games that are made by Nintendo, if you go down the history, most of our games were created by, or at least designed by, one person. And we fully know this. And the next big thing could come from anywhere nowadays. This is not the time when you need to invest millions and millions to secure success. But we live in an age where one person could actually make the next biggest game for the next decade in their bedroom. And we understand this. And so we want to help and maximize the chances of that happening. And then this is kind of our company motto. We'd like to say, together with you, we want to put smiles on each face, on the faces of everyone we touch. And this just means that everyone meaning consumers, gamers, developers, distributors, people in events, organizers, everybody who's here basically. And for them to think like, positivity came out of being involved with Nintendo. So that's kind of what we thrive for. And this goes not as just a corporate mandate, but in everything we do. So this is a common theme for our games, our development, support, business, everything. And this is kind of the part of the reason why I'm here. I'm not paid to do this or anything. I just want to be here and be in touch with you here so that you know what to do when you want to do something with Nintendo. So just for an icebreaker, I've got a little trivia for you. So, when was Nintendo established? This is just a quick quiz. So raise your hand if you think it's 1889. Oh, you've done your studies, eh? 1947? Yeah. 1974? Considering it's like a computer game thing? Yeah. I'd agreed, but it was actually 1889. I gave it away myself, but it does come as a surprise to people who haven't read about us. And I'll show you the first headquarters of Nintendo that was in Kyoto. So this is what it looked like. And it's interesting because pre-1945, Japanese language was written from right to left, so it's still like that in this building. Unfortunately, this building doesn't exist anymore, but the spirit lives on. And I guess another interesting thing, the railings that bicycle is leaning on, this is not a fence to keep people away, it's a fence to keep horses away. So you think about that time, it's like, okay, it wasn't cars, it wasn't bicycle, it was horses, right? So we go back that far. So, I mean, this is what offices look like now. I mean, to be honest, they look a bit boring now. It used to look better in the past, but hey, time moves on. And this is how we look now. So we have three main offices around the world. So we have Nintendo of America, which is based in Redmond, which is basically next to Seattle in Washington State. And we have our colleagues in Japan, based in Kyoto. And unlike many companies in Japan, where they moved their headquarters to Tokyo just out of ease for business, we have been very conservative and stayed in Kyoto. So our headquarters, our developing offices, all the studios are still in Kyoto. We have a small office in Tokyo, maybe like 50 people, but everything is still done in the founding land of Kyoto. And Nintendo of Europe is in Frankfurt, so I think we have been in Frankfurt for about 32 years, I think, since 1990 or something like that. And it's always been the center of our European business and in Europe. So, of course, in Slovakia, we fall under the NOE jurisdiction, and this is kind of the reason why I'm here today. So we basically work 24/7, so 8-hour shifts, basically. So we have the good time differences going on, so we're literally working 24/7 around the globe. Another quick trivia. So what did Nintendo make in 1889? It's like, raise your hand if you think it was Game & Watch. Playing card? Game Boy? Okay, yeah, it's playing card. So actually, Nintendo has always been about entertaining people. We are, as Peter mentioned earlier in the introduction, we are very specific, and we are very focused. And our main field of play is video games. So if you think about the whole games industry and other major players, especially platform holders, they have many other businesses outside of gaming. For a Nintendo, if you remove gaming, we have nothing left, except for playing cards. So this is how Nintendo started in 1889. This is a special type of playing card called Hanafuda. I think it was invented in around 1600s, late 1500s, and it derives from Portuguese carta, which was, I guess, the kind of root of the modern playing card. And that was actually brought to Japan from Portugal in mid 16th century. And then it stayed, and it became something completely different, obviously, because I don't think any Portuguese people will recognize this now, but this is how it happened. And then Nintendo was started. It was founded manufacturing these cards in the 1800s. And in 1902, Nintendo was actually the first company in Japan to have released the Western playing card, the Jack, Queen, King, the normal playing card that we know in Japan, because until 1902, the Western playing cards were not known in Japan. So I'd like to say we've always been innovative, especially when it comes to entertainment. And we'll always focus on entertainment, essentially. We don't ever intend to really deviate off to another thing. When we do, of course, we had the movies and stuff, but that's also part of the strategy to increase the touch point so people can see these things and then come to gaming. That's our purpose. It's just to increase the touch points, and we don't intend to really deviate off to a different industry. And I think this is what kind of makes Nintendo unique, that we are so specialized. We only do one thing, and that is games/entertainment. So what is a Nintendo Switch? I mean, it's getting on now, so I'm going to probably skip this part unless there's someone who doesn't know what Nintendo Switch is. Does anyone here own a Nintendo Switch or have owned a Nintendo Switch? Oh, that's great. Anyone thinking of getting one? Maybe when it's like a bit cheaper? Yeah? Okay. And anyone not thinking about it at all? Just not your thing? Don't be shy. I'm not going to shoot you. Okay, cool. Okay. So, Nintendo Switch is a unique console in a way that it kind of tries to do everything at once. So you can play it as a normal console with TV mode. And just out of interest, those of you who answered you own Nintendo Switch, do you play TV mode or handheld? So raise your hand if you play on the TV more than handheld. Ah, interesting. Okay. And we also have this handheld mode, which is, I guess, the unique point of a Nintendo console. And then this is kind of in between. It's a tabletop mode. So although it's not connected, it's not quite handheld because it's the monitors on the table. So with these three modes, we basically wanted to provide three different types of play for anytime, anywhere, with anyone. And I think, especially with tabletop, the concept of being able to share a game on the spot has been very, very important for us. And this really signifies Nintendo's strategy through and through. And this was a very interesting attempt. And at the beginning, when we announced Nintendo Switch, not many people really believed in it, especially coming back off after Wii U, where it wasn't as popular as we had hoped. But fortunately, a Nintendo Switch was widely accepted by a lot of people, and we are kind of enjoying the success of the platform right now. So before going back to Nintendo Switch. So before Nintendo Switch days, Nintendo used to have two lines of development for console. We had one line of developers for fixed console, the traditional console, and the other for portable console, so like DS, Game Boy Color. And oddly enough, they didn't really work together. So if you think about Nintendo Wii, that was more than 10 years ago. Nintendo Wii came out, I think, within a year of Nintendo DS. And it was a bit of a shock in the industry at the time, because everybody thought, why is Nintendo releasing two major consoles in that short period? And the answer is because we didn't really plan it. It was one team decided it's this time, and then the other team also decided, oh, we're releasing this console then, and then they just happened to happen at the same time. Luckily for us, they were both hugely successful, so they both ended up creating kind of a synergy with Wii and DS, and I think that was when our business really boomed. So, it ended up being okay, but wasn't the best way to go about, especially for a company that is trying to strive for stability. So we've kind of learned a lesson. And the late Mr. Iwata, who used to be our global president for Nintendo, when he basically came on board, he decided that, okay, this is not efficient. Why do we have two teams making fairly similar things at the same time? Why don't you two teams merge and get together and make something even better without diluting your resources? So that's actually where Nintendo Switch came from. It's the first console that we have released since the merger of these two teams. And I think you can see really how it is a product of two teams that were focused on traditional console gaming with a TV or monitor, and another team who have been concentrating on handheld mode, portable devices. So Switch really was a kind of an ultimate culmination of our experiences and resources that came to bring about a united console and a fully integrated hybrid console. So enough about that. So at the moment, we have three different models for Nintendo Switch. We have the original Nintendo Switch, which we internally call the flagship model. We have Nintendo Switch Lite, which are even more portable. This cannot connect to the TV, unfortunately. And then we have the Nintendo Switch OLED model, which comes with a swanky OLED screen. So I think at the moment, most of the sales are through OLED model, just because it's newer, people like newer things. But all three models are actually still selling quite equally, because there's always a market for something different in each region. So Nintendo Switch was launched in March 2017, simultaneously in Japan, Europe, Australia, and the Americas. I think these days, staggered console releases don't really fly too well, but it used to be the case. If you remember, like even only 10 years ago, a console used to release in Japan first, and then a year later comes the US, and then Europe usually got it like later, 2 years later or something. But at least for Nintendo Switch, it all happened at the same time. And how successful is it? So to date, I think as of 30th of September 2023, we have sold 130 million units of Nintendo Switch. And this is all models combined together. And this is basically, I think, is the best-selling console in Nintendo history, or it's about to be. I can't remember how many DS sold. It's definitely top 3 of console history in terms of number of sales. And where are they all sold in? So this is the kind of breakdown of our market. So 39% of the units are sold in the Americas. So that's North America and South America combined. And then around 26% are in Europe. So this includes all of Europe up to about, including the Nordics and Eastern Europe. And then Japan is 23%. And then other is basically kind of rest of Asia outside of Japan. So that's like Korea, Taiwan, Hong Kong, etc. And Australia and New Zealand. And that kind of makes up our global market at the moment. And then, the games people can play on Nintendo Switch. I'm sorry, the title is a bit old here. I haven't updated the slide recently. But of course, first-party games. Nintendo games are probably the most important at least for Nintendo. And this is probably the driving force of majority of people who are on the Nintendo platform. It's for them to play Nintendo games, or at least this is how it used to be. Times are changing, actually. So yeah, there are many Nintendo games, but what's really interesting for Nintendo Switch is for the first time in Nintendo's console history, we have the highest kind of attendance from different publishers all over the world who have never released a game on Nintendo platform before. So, for instance, well, at the time, Bethesda wasn't Microsoft yet, but they released Skyrim on Nintendo Switch. And this was the first time that Bethesda had ever released a game on Nintendo console. And we have many of these examples where all these major and small players within the industry had entered the Nintendo platform for the first time. And this is kind of probably one of the major reasons for the success of a Nintendo Switch. It's because we at Nintendo also recognize that there are so many more gamers out there, and the genre, people's taste, how much time people have diversified so much that Nintendo alone can possibly not even imagine maintaining the supply of games that are demanded from all the players. We cannot make all the games people want to play. And there are also certain genres that we just can't make. There are certain games Nintendo is not good at doing. And those things have to be complemented, supplemented, supported by partners of us who can bring in things that we just can't do. So, I mean, we've had games like The Witcher 3, who would have thought, Cities Skylines, FIFA, these games. All of these games we couldn't even possibly begin to imagine making ourselves. So partners and the importance of our third-party partners have increased drastically for Nintendo Switch. In the past consoles like Wii or DS, even 3DS, majority of our business actually still came from first-party games. And we used to get a lot of complaints from our partners saying, hey, Nintendo, we want to release on your platform, but it seems that your platform is just for yourself. There's no real space for external partners to come in and make business. Can you do something? And then for us, it's like, well, we're trying our best, but it seems that everybody who buys our console just wants to play Nintendo games. That's how it used to be in the past, but for Switch, I can tell you that more than half of the games sold on our eShop are not from Nintendo. More units are now being sold by third-party partners. And this trend is not going to reverse anymore because Nintendo maybe releases 10, 15 games a year at max, and we are seeing more than 100 games released from third-party partners per month. So there's absolutely no way that we can even catch up. And this is a trend that's going to continue. And this is also very true not only for the AAA, AA, big publishers, but indies is also a huge proportion of our business now. And I hope if you own a Switch, that maybe Nintendo Switch has kind of become the de facto indie console. For instance, many people still play indie games on PC, for instance, but consoles, it's always a slightly different audience. But we get the feedback that Steam and PC gaming complement really well with Nintendo platform, namely Switch. So, I mean, of those who own Nintendo Switch here, I mean, how many of you play indie games on Nintendo Switch? Raise your hand if you play indie games on Nintendo Switch. Yeah, great. And this trend really is increasing, and more indies are releasing on Nintendo. And I think it's helped that us as Nintendo, as a company, have really kind of veered towards supporting indie publishers and developers. Whether you're releasing with publisher, through a publisher, or self-publishing, we try to make everything as easy as possible. And we are also upping the game in supporting our partners. So we now have this global showcase called Indie World. And only maybe 5 years ago, our indie support had been fragmented across the world. So we had a separate showcase for US, Japan, and Europe. We all did separate things. And in order to be featured in one of these, you had to speak to different people. Typical Nintendo, everything was so regional and fragmented. And we heard your voices. It's like, can you make it a bit easier? Can you support us globally? This is still an ongoing challenge, but at least for Indie World, it is now a unified showcase that we pick globally and we air globally. So it's been hugely successful. So this one is probably back from 2021, but we do one every few months. And then this one in 21 had 10 million views after a couple of months, which was a huge number for us back then, still is for now. And it's not just about the view count for these shows, because a lot of people anticipate shows like Indie World or even Nintendo Direct. I think less than half of the people who've heard or seen something from these showcases have actually watched our official stream. But many people hear from other publications talking about it, writing about it, or influencers doing a reaction video, etc. So it really kind of cascades into hundreds of other videos from just one. So we're not just looking at the view count of one video here, but this is just an example of how we are really trying to push for indie titles and smaller games to come to and become successful in Nintendo Switch. So the criteria for games like this to be featured, it's really just a conversation. We hear from everybody, from our partners saying, hey, we've got a game like this, what do you think? And this is how it starts. So yeah, this has been a very successful vehicle for us so far. And we do still have some free-to-play titles on Nintendo Switch as well, and they're doing really well. And yeah, we currently have over 10,000 games available on Nintendo Switch now. It's a huge catalog. We were not expecting this many games to be available on Nintendo Switch. So it comes as a surprise to us, and we are kind of struggling to keep up with all the operational side of things, but we're surviving. And I guess to wrap up, what I wanted to say is that if you are making a game at the moment, if you're thinking of making a game, if you know someone who is thinking of making a game, whatever, that game can be on Nintendo Switch. It's really not that difficult anymore. I hear stories from the past, only a few years ago, partners telling me it's so difficult to get in touch with Nintendo. Nintendo doesn't really want to talk. I don't speak Japanese. How do I speak to Nintendo? Well, in the past, we probably didn't have enough people around the world. We still don't, by the way. But we're getting a bit better. So, many people laugh if I say but we are relatively small in the platform business. And just to give you an idea, we have less than 10 people around the world doing what I do, for instance, being the contact point for partners, publishers, and developers. So if you think about 10,000 games, and we probably have about 7,000 partners, 10 people, 7,000 partners, it doesn't quite compute. And I know it doesn't make sense. Not every partner we speak to directly, unfortunately, but then again, not every partner actually wants to talk to us, so it kind of works out. But anyway, we're trying. We always prefer direct contacts. So if you've got something coming up, let us know. How? There's a website called developer.nintendo.com. If you go to this website, anyone can register, and you put your details in, and you have to put a lot of details in depending on what you want to do. But for instance, if you want to become a Switch developer and order a dev kit, there are certain things we have to do. NDA, publishing agreement, and of course, dev kit is not a certified device for consumers. So we can't just sell this in MediaMarkt or something. It's not allowed. We don't have the license to become a electrical appliance seller for that kit. So all these regulations and things limit us to do things through this website and make sure everything is all in order and legally sound, etc. But it's really not that hard. So you go there, put your details in, and then put your criteria in, and then you apply for access to Nintendo Switch. And then you should hear back from us within a week or something. Not everybody can still get access. We do have criteria that we can't disclose, but most of it is actually fairly simple and straightforward. So if you're thinking of doing this, have a go. And yeah, if you have any questions.
Thank you. So, can we get also Slido? So if anyone has questions, then you can type them into Slido as well. And, well, yeah. So do we have any questions from the audience? Anyone? Okay.
When are you planning the next gen of Nintendo?
Okay.
Yeah, I can't really comment on that, I'm afraid. Yeah.
Thank you for the presentation, and I have like two questions. First of all, what is the no-go zone for the Switch games or Nintendo games in general?
No-go zones?
Yes, which genres or topics are not welcome to the
Okay, I get
Nintendo
you.
games?
Yeah, so Nintendo currently does not have concept approval. So you don't have to tell us what you're doing, but we rely on rating bodies to do the decision-making for us. Because we want to be super fair and transparent, we don't want to say, oh, we like this game, so we want to support you, but we don't like that game because that game could be Mario competitor. You know, that's not cool. So we don't make any decisions. If your game passes the rating bodies, like ESRB, PEGI, USK, then it's game.
Okay, great. And the second one is, so if you have a plan for a game like in a farther future and you know that you need more horsepower, so is there a possibility to make already an agreement for the next gen console, or the continuation of the Switch? Is there a possibility to
Okay, that's sounding like a trick question.
I know. That was
Like, I can't really comment on that at the moment. So, I mean, I can tell you that our global president, Mr. Furukawa, did say in shareholders meeting like a few months ago that we are working on something, but there won't be any news until end of fiscal year 24. So that's next March. There won't be any news, or there won't be a new release or anything like that. So that's the basic information I can provide.
Right, okay. Any other questions?
Actually, going back to your first question, although we do rely on rating bodies, we don't support any sort of infringement of IP, you know, any rights of other people. So, of course, if there's a clone of another game, we'll have to take it down simply because of the law. But yeah, otherwise, all good.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. In the meantime, while I get that there, can you tell us maybe how many players on Switch play TV mode compared to handheld mode?
TV mode. Yes, I can tell you that roughly about 60% of old owners play mostly portable.
Okay.
And only about 15% of people play mostly TV mode. I can only say mostly because if somebody plays one mode for a second, we can see that they've played in a different mode. But I'd say 60% portable, and then 30 or 25%, 30% of people are kind of in between, 50-50, 60-40, 70-30, whatnot.
Okay.
I'm guessing that Nintendo takes a cut from every like indie game purchase that's like bought on Nintendo Switch. Do you know, and can you tell us what like the cut is that?
It's actually in the agreement of the publishing agreement if you apply to access, but it's industry standard.
Okay, thank you.
Any?
There's a gentleman there.
There is a gentleman there. Okay, didn't see him.
Oh, down that way.
Sorry. I'm not the best moderator here.
Sure. So I would like to ask, like, what's the optimization process when it comes to Nintendo games? Because, like, in the past, we have seen some ports which were not so great, I would say, when it comes to FPS. So, like, do you guys like intervene in like? You are talking to the actively to the developers, like, look, your game is not running all right. You have to do something on your side, or like, how does it work?
Okay, so there's a process that we'd like to think we invented in games at least, which is QA, right? So we don't do QA anymore of the games, but we do have a team called Lock Check, and they basically check the conformity and the guidelines, the policies of the game that's been submitted to us. And what we do is to check that your game runs as it says. So we don't see how good the game is, but we see how well the game runs. So if a game is like 10 frames per second, we would consider that unplayable. So we would then probably reject that submission and say, can you redo it because it's not really playable. But it's always up to the publisher and developer. We don't really intervene much. We're kind of a platform provider, and we're not telling everybody what to do, essentially. So we would say, hey, like, your game is 20 frames max, not great. But if a publisher insists, like, well, we hit 25, we're fine with it, we can't really say no to that. So that's why there are variants of quality sometimes, because it's not really up to us, it's actually up to the publisher. But we'd like to see minimum 30, really, right, as an industry basic. But it's not always enforceable. But if it's extremely bad, we comment. And if it's like 5, 10 frames, we'd reject the games. And on that point, we do provide technical support. So we do have dedicated engineers, in-house engineers, depending on what engine you're using, because that also varies, whether you're using Epic, Unreal, or Unity, or GameMaker, etc. We have specialists of all these engines. So, sometimes talking to us helps because, there are always bugs and quirks that can be solved and to improve the overall performance.
Hi, I want to ask, because on Switch there are exclusive games that were made by Nintendo, so you can only play them on Switch, but has anyone reached out to you that they want to make game only for Nintendo that is not someone from Nintendo, basically, some indie developer who only wants to make a game for Switch?
Sure, yeah, there are many. There are many games on Nintendo Switch, especially on indie titles that are actually exclusive for Nintendo. And this is not because we asked them to do this. It's usually, again, the choice of the publisher. They think that the audience for their game is best suited for Nintendo Switch and gives the right messaging to the potential players. So we're not really trying to limit people. On the contrary, we are actually telling partners, publishers and developers, not to do exclusivity, because we don't like to ring-fence content to a certain platform. We don't want to say to someone, oh, if you don't own Switch, you can't play this game. We want everybody to have a choice, and we want people to pick Nintendo and play the game they want out of choice, not because we kind of made it like that. Unless, of course, it's a Nintendo game. That's a different story. But if it's a partner game, we actually encourage multi-platform, unless there's like a very specific reason. And I think what you're mentioning is probably one of those. There are some games that just say, well, most of our audience for this game overlaps with Nintendo Switch. We thought about doing other consoles, but we don't think it's going to be worth, releasing another game, another SKU for that console, so we're not doing it. So we've heard some people do that, and of course we have the opposite. We have games that are out on other consoles, not on Switch. So again, it boils down to the choice of the publishers, I think.
And if I may have a follow-up question to that, do you offer these developers some extra support if they want to make game only for Switch, or is it the same as
Yeah,
for
so
anyone
it's
else?
a platform business is a give and take business. So when somebody offers us something exclusive and then expects us to pay for the potential loss of revenue, it's a bit expensive for us because we're thinking, okay, we pay for your expected revenue, but then are we going to make that money back from selling your game? Maybe not, maybe yes. But it's a bit of a risk for us. So in that case, we wouldn't really consider it because it doesn't make sense for us. And I think the trend really is everybody's kind of stepping away from exclusivity because I think gamers don't like exclusives because it really limits the choice. You know, everybody wants to have the console of their choice and then play whatever they want on it. So I would say that's not always the case. It does sometimes happen, and we do have some exclusives that we support. But it's just a result, and we've probably had a very lengthy conversation to why we should do that, rather than us saying, oh, you know, we want this game as an exclusive on Nintendo, we'll give you money. It's never that simple.
Thank you so much.
Okay. So, anyone else? I would just like ask maybe one more question. Peter, do you want to ask some question?
Thanks. I would like to ask, is there some specific reason for the policy for not having user reviews on the store?
There are. The most important is actually technical. We're not very technically advanced in terms of, if you look at the eShop, you know, just between us here, right? I hope this is not recorded, but eShop is not the most advanced e-commerce site on Earth. I don't think our system can handle things like that. And then we'd have to moderate, and obviously for everything for Nintendo, we have to be inclusive. We have to be family friendly, we have to be kids friendly, we have to be adult friendly, everybody. So we can't possibly have a place where people could just write things without moderation, and we just don't have the resources for it. So all those factors put together, we're not doing it at the moment.
Yeah. I was just thinking maybe something simple like 5 stars or something without
Like stars, yeah. It's a discussion, ongoing discussion, yeah, but not in the current gen.
Thanks.
That was actually something along my follow-up question, because as you have a huge amount of content in the store, and it's getting quite complicated to get yourself somehow visible and somehow present in the store. So, are there any tricks, any advices which you can maybe recommend how to improve the visibility for the developers in the store?
Yeah, I mean, visibility is a huge issue, and I mentioned we have 10,000 games, and I can tell you that the current eShop wasn't designed for 10,000 games. We simply didn't expect it. Coming out of Wii U, I think we were thinking, if we could get 500 games from partners, that would be great. And then now we have 10,000 games. So we're very happy, but we can't handle it. So the visibility is a huge issue, and we know it. We do have curated section in eShop where our content team actually choose and promote games. We have social media that we also support partners with. We have these showcases like Indie World, Nintendo Direct to support our titles. Other than that, I guess the best thing you can do is actually to be in touch with us. Let us know you're doing something, you're releasing a game, or you're thinking of releasing a game in a period, and sooner you tell us, the better. You know, if I know something a year in advance, I can just have it in the back of my mind, and I might come back to you 3 months before launch saying, hey, are you doing this? And then, yeah, even if it's coming out in 2 months, if we know it, there might be something we can do. If we don't, they tend to just get lost in the flow of so many titles, and it may not get picked up. So to increase your chances, be in touch, let us know.
Okay, makes sense. And are there any plans to improve the orientation in the shop or structure or somehow the visibility kind of thing?
For the eShop,
Yeah.
not in the current gen.
Not in the current gen.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's just not possible. We'd have to rebuild the whole thing again.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. Makes sense.
unfortunately.
Okay, so I think that was the last question. So thank you, everyone. Thanks,
Okay.
Mao, for
Thank you very
coming
much for your
over.
time. Oh, and I'm around here. Like, I don't have anything, actually, any meetings planned or anything. So if you want to have a chat, then just ask me. You know, I'll be walking around. So.
Please do that. I mean, it's a once-in-a-life opportunity. Hopefully not, but yeah, worth a try. Thanks.